Hello and welcome back to the Vince Nerone podcast. This is going to be a really exciting episode for me. We're going to be starting part one of a three-part series following the album trilogy that was created during what I like to call band era. The three albums in this were Smile Through Suffering, Hurts More Thinking About It, and finally Smell the Roses. Each one of these albums captured almost a snapshot of my life, sort of documented things for me that I can now look back on and see what it was like for me at those times, the things I was dealing with, the emotions I was pouring into these things, or better yet, the emotions that were being pulled out of me into these songs. Today we're going to focus on album one, which is Smile Through Suffering, and we're going to talk about the lyrics, the songs, and like I said before, what I was going through at that time that shaped those lyrics. Before we get into it though, I do want to address something that may be a little bit confusing for people who have been following my music for a while, because I sort of transitioned into this, what I like to call podcast era. And it almost might seem like a pivot, but to me, it feels more like a continuation of sorting out my life in a particular medium at that time. See, music does something cool. It's like expression. It can feel almost unconscious. Things we're going through, they could be happy, proud, sad, turmoil. These things can get pulled out of you and dumped right into the lyrics. With podcasting, however, it's more direct and structured. It's almost like the integration, especially when you're looking back on these themes. And, when you're really talking out loud, you got to be able to digest the ideas, especially if you're coming off the cuff. Otherwise, I won't know what to say here. So it's a lot more looking back, reflecting, whereas music is almost like a subconscious thing. I don't know what's going on with me right now. Let's write a song about it. And then through looking through the song, it's like, oh, that's what I'm feeling inside. So it's really cool that dynamic. And I hope that when I'm talking about the music era versus the podcasting era, you're not getting the idea that music is over. It's just maybe a little bit off to the background for now. And it's something I hope to revisit possibly sooner than later even. And the last thing I want to say about it too is both of these things have become huge vehicles of growth for me. Writing aside, there's the performing, the friendships, trying to lead a group of guys to something bigger than ourselves, and trying to understand where I do that well and where I do that poorly. There was a lot of both during that. Putting myself in the uncomfortable situations of performing for the first time. I gotta show my hat feels. Love to see you guys there. This is Death of My Stress. And now with this podcast, it's a lot more systemized and structured, and I have to make an outline about things so that I come across more clear, make sure each system is working. And then you get to the end product of editing it and you find out something wasn't working, so that sucks. It's good though. It's trial and error. It's uncomfortable once again. And that's kind of the common theme in growth and in these two things. With that being said, we'll move on to the context of what Smile Through Suffering was, the album. I think I was around 24 at the time of writing the album, and I was a solo artist to start out with. I met my managers, Jacqueline and Jake Schiffman. We were working on an album called Life How I Wrote It, kind of finished off that process, and finally I started writing new music, and this new music would soon become Smile Through Suffering, the album. I was sort of a basement artist, if you will. I'd call myself the boy from the basement, because that's where all the work was happening at the time. I wasn't going out and performing. I was just recording in the basement with friends, freestyling, all that fun stuff that we did as earlier artists. Maybe you're doing it right now even. And I loved that time as well. But eventually you realize that you do want to go perform in front of people. And so this catalog of music that we had started making, I brought a band in to sort of build around that. So Smile Through Suffering had already been somewhat started and made with the original catalog, and I think we added like 3 of the songs later on that were on the album from the actual band themselves, which I think was just Artie. So Artie was mainly producing these things, maybe Dibby as well. I'd have to look back, to be honest. I should probably have checked that. But regardless, it was something brand new in regards to working with a group of people, going out on stage. We started off with sort of test group of people, My buddy Steve was the bass player for a bit, and we had other people coming in and trying that out. And the first show, we had a different group of guys, and it really settled on, but finally it did settle in October of 2021 with the final group of guys that had gone on for the next 4 years as a group to make this trilogy.
The sky looked just right, looking at it made me wanna fly. Teardrop be coming out from my eyes, sunset, give me butterflies. Let me know. Bright like sunshine in summertime. So uptight, what life did I want?
Smile Through Suffering came out in April of 2022, about a half year after the band met up, and that went on to having a album release show and so on. And it was just a really great time for me. Just the band practices and planning with everybody and just getting excited about this new journey, this new arc of things we were going to be experiencing and trying to build something epic.
Didn't think I'd get this far, it's not what they say. People keep telling me the worst is yet to come, at least you know. Just like that Saturday, fell the place like setup. My future looking like diamonds on my wrist and necklace. Like we too fat, can't catch us.
When you're trying to build something epic, there's also regular life going on around this. And who I was at the time was having a good time, but also struggling internally in many ways, adding fuel to the fire with substances, not to the extent that it was ruining my life, not to the extent that many from the outside would say it's even a problem, but to me it was, just because I'm somebody who already maybe ruminates and sees the glass half empty sometimes and always wants to look at the problems because those are the things I'm looking to fix, and has a hard time looking at what I have, the bright side. Day 11, first day back to the gym. Let's get it. So all this is going on. You're trying to make something epic, but you still have work. You're still trying to train or go to the gym, and it's just added pressure, which is where I like to be, ironically. At least I must, because it seems to be where I always end up landing. I don't like low stimulation, if you want to put it that way. I'm always pretty much grinding, as much as I feel this internal battle with it as well at the same time. And just this internal battle of, I think we make problems worse in our heads, but we're going to get into all that. And this actually leads into this theme of Smile Through Suffering, which has a lot to do with the mask we put on in life. Because I think people want us to be this middle ground, this predictable. They don't want to see us our most proud, excited, happy, and energized self, because that might feel a little too much for them, or that might make them feel small. But they also don't want to hear our saddest, darkest, most painful times, because that feels a little awkward. It feels a little too much. So we put these masks on to sort of fit in society. And so you'll see this theme all over Smile Through Suffering and throughout these songs that we're going to go over today. Specifically, I picked out 3. It seems like at that time in my life, the mask, the overthinking, rumination, these themes just kept on showing up. And at some point I felt like, wow, this is just a lot of different problems we're talking about. But I actually think more specifically, it's a singular problem looked at through many different angles. And the singular problem, I guess, can be summed up as trying to fit the mask appropriately for every audience, which is impossible. And this explains the conflict and the internal battle that we're always struggling with. And maybe the idea is to stop trying to fit in. The first song I wanted to talk about from the album was track number 1, Maniac.
What's it really to ya? You can't even see. You'll be missing me. Don't stay in your bed.
And this song can pretty much be summed up on how our thoughts can turn against us. We can make a situation so much more dramatic, and we can make ourselves suffer more just by thinking about it more. And this is the idea of thoughts made me a maniac. Another line in there is tears fall in the rain, and posing like photographs, because that's just how we're supposed to act. Once again, this is pointing back to the mask to cover our thoughts, making us a maniac. And also, what was cool about that line is, if you look at my life objectively at that time, I was working a pretty good job. I was going to the gym regularly. I have good relationships. Everything's pretty much good, but we can be upset and settle on the things that aren't good, and they ruminate in our brain, and they can make us feel crazy and like we're constantly on a battlefield, which is a really interesting concept that was pulled out of me into these songs, especially consistently through so many. I don't know. I mean, I guess it just really showed me looking back that I'm not a sunshines and rainbows kind of guy. I follow up with a line later on. It says, I'm A-okay getting too stoned. And that points to the substances at the time. Weed, alcohol, nicotine were the ones that I had used. And like I said, it wasn't like to a crazy amount, but I could feel each one sort of increasing volatility and reactivity and making the drama more dramatic and making the thoughts more ruminatory. Is that a word? I just made that up. But it made me ruminate more. And then I started contemplating things like, in this line, big house money and the whip gonna be two-toned. Maybe then my heart will still be cold. And that's talking about that even with these things that we believe are markers of success, we still aren't going to feel happy. And then it goes on to, maybe it's the people that I do hold close, and I think it's good to know I try not to cause you pain. I'm still talking to myself these days. So that whole list of lyrics right there, it's about how relationships might be the real thing that makes us happy. And I'm not trying to cause these people pain by bringing them my problems. So I'm talking to myself instead, or maybe I am talking to them still and I'm feeling guilty about that, which causes me to talk to myself more and ruminate more. But thank God for those people, because they are the support system and they are the happiness in life. The next song we can go into is the title track, Smile Through Suffering.
Smile inside a window, you don't know my pain. Hiding eyes that never tell you everything. No, 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 no.
And once again, we touched on this just by explaining the overall theme. It is about, maybe masking pain and trying to fit in societally. Off the jump, smile inside a window, you don't know my pain. It's just about taking a snapshot. You see the smile, and inside, there's way more to the story that you don't get to see. And that's why I lead into hiding eyes that never tell you everything. In a later line, I say, I'll be fine, or I really don't care. And that's about how you're constantly trying to tell yourself things are going to get better, things are going to get better. You're trying to fix it. And then finally, it's like, I just can't anymore. I give up. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Somehow, I just want to turn the thinking off, the brain off. And that actually probably would be the best thing. But guess what? We can't do that. I say, don't tell me why your life is not fair. That is the idea of somebody getting sick of you constantly bringing this. They're this support person for you. And you keep on bringing up the same problems. Now, I told myself I wasn't going to drink tonight. And I drank. And this thing, this cycle happens all the time. People are like, well, would you just fix the problem already? Or maybe this is the voice of somebody that we're painting on an imaginary conversation with somebody later. Like they're just going to, I don't even want to bring this to them again because they're going to be like, we don't want to hear about how your life isn't fair anymore. We've heard it a million times. I say, I don't bleed in silence. I am aware, but at least it's not a road to nowhere. So that is the flip side where it's like, yeah, I understand I'm bleeding in front of everybody. I'm vulnerably telling you about my problems every day, dumping my shit at your door. But at least maybe from that, you can help me to get where I'm finally trying to go. So at least maybe it's not a road to nowhere. Yeah, I'm probably annoying you. Yeah, I need your help a lot, but maybe this will get us somewhere. As opposed to just holding it all in and, I don't know, going nowhere, I guess. So you can see a lot of these themes of hiding, showing up maybe to the rest of the world as everything's great, everything's good, I'm working out, I'm doing the job. And it's funny because things maybe are really great. And it leads me to this reflection of like, we create our own problems and it's all perspective maybe. But yet there's also real problems too. I mean, that's completely fair, I think. And we're going to get into this later, so maybe I won't even say it, but if the problems were gone, then what? I think Death of My Stress encompasses a lot of this, really.
I'm enemies with myself these days. When things are great, I'm still messed up. I doubt myself and still entertain the thought of a sweet surrender.
The first line, I'm enemies with myself these days. When things are great, I'm still messed up. I doubt myself and still entertain the thought of a sweet surrender. Same exact theme. You're doubting yourself. Everything's going good, but why does it not feel good on the inside? And you're still entertaining the thought of that sweet surrender. We're not talking about like giving up on life in general. I mean, God forbid, but just turning it off at least. Let us have some peace, this idealistic, just let us enjoy the moment, be in the present. I follow up with diamond in the rough, and it takes time. Guess that's why it's worth finding those. So that takes this idea of, I'm struggling all the time. My life is so hard because I'm fighting myself. Well, maybe the rumination and the struggles and the suffering, it feels like a lot. Yeah, it feels like you've been doing it and struggling with it for so long, but it takes time to find the diamond. So maybe through this, there's growth. Maybe the suffering isn't for nothing. And that's why I say death of my stress, but it won't be the death of me. So at one point, I'm finally going to figure out how to kill the stress, how to stop feeling this way and instead get this, I don't know if it even exists, but this eternal peace of letting everything go, not caring about showing up without the mask. You're either going to take it or leave it. This is who I am. And I think that's what these albums and this album is kind of bringing to the forefront, trying to make me aware of. It's like, maybe we care too much and the idea is just to let go. And I mean, these lines, they just flow perfectly into each other. This is kind of like from me observing somebody else that says, crying because she drunk. It's really because she's hiding hard times finding trust. So this is just a micro example within the song of like, she's just crying. She's just been drinking. It's like, is she crying because she's been drinking, or is she crying because there's something she's got buried that is coming to the forefront because of the alcohol? Once again, through line to these substances, increasing volatility. Yes, it might be good to get those emotions off the plate, and drinking finally opens you up enough to let you cry it out. But is that really the best form or the best vehicle for processing that? Because the next day might be twice as bad. Now you have the same problem because you're not really fixing the problem by crying about it. Not that you shouldn't cry. And now you also have this hangover on top of it. And that's why it's really hard. Like, I'm not perfect, don't get me wrong, but it seems to me that the ROI on these things isn't worth it. And we're really just grabbing for substances because maybe the anticipation dopamine gives us the idea that, this thing's 90%, but it could be 100% fun, satisfaction with the substance. I don't want to get off on the beaten path of this, but maybe it's just 1% better for 10 minutes though. But the anticipation dopamine lets us cross that threshold, and now we're chasing it all day long. That goes for nicotine, alcohol, and you know the story. If you're somebody who has any sort of addiction wiring, which a lot of us do. So man, I just love, like I said, to circle back to the context, the idea of music as one medium, podcasting as one medium, the expression through the music, as you could see here, and then the podcast as being more of like a reflection and more direct, structured of like, this is what it meant, and talking about it. And it's like, that actually goes into like healthy processing. I process through expression through the music and then really integrating it through the podcast maybe. So that's kind of where I'm going here. So those are the 3 songs I want to talk about. And I think looking back on it now, it's really cool to see these songs almost like diary entries. It allowed me to be vulnerable. And I think I've always been more of a vulnerable person than most, but it would be more with private people. It was a doorway for me to be vulnerable publicly, because I think people can be more okay when it's a musical expression. And now that I've kind of lived that life, it was like a doorway to public vulnerability through dialogue in this podcast. It allowed me to feel like I wasn't just coming out of left field with, talking about these things, because I had already talked about it through the music. What's cool too is the lyrics can feel sort of sad and suffering. I understand a smile through suffering hurts more thinking about it. And you might get the impression that I'm like this depressed person, but actually it's actually the opposite. I'm a happy, positive person. And this was a very great time in my life. It was the beginning of the band era. It was forming the group, rehearsing together, playing our first shows, understanding what it means to throw a show and have an audience come out and deal with that pressure and that anxiety and grow through it. You know, the imposter syndrome that goes across so many fields in life shows up so much here. Public speaking, just being comfortable with all eyes on you, building a system with friends and trying to create something that was just an idea and turn it into a reality. The relationships were such an important part of it all. Not only just the band and, you know, Jack and Schiff, but all the people that we met along the way. You know, Spider Studios with Ben, and I met, you know, Bree and Kevin and Macklin, and, you know, the list can go on and on about people that I feel like I met that were just awesome people. Brian from Live Mixtapes, just genuinely good people. Young Cat, baby, you know what I mean? And so I love that we were able to create this album and the whole album trilogy. And I'm excited to talk about the next two albums on the next one, on the next episode. But it's honestly a period that I'm always going to be grateful for. The album and the era around it is undoubtedly something that I will treasure for the rest of my life.
When nothing goes right, but everything's fine. When it's saying it's all love, but it's really all lies. When they tell me grow up, but I'd rather go die. Spend too much time, spending too much, and it don't make sense, but it turns out fine. I got confidence that I'm kind of shit. She complimented me, I exist in life. In pictures with you, that's life.
Until the next one, guys, stay tuned for Hurts More Thinking About It, recap, and Smell the Roses. I hope this was cool. We'll see you next time.